Good morning, Nigeria. Welcome to Daybreak on Trust TV, reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I am Ayuba Ilya. Super excited to have you join us on the show this morning. Good morning, Stella.
Good morning, Ayuba, and good morning, Nigerians. It's a delight to be here with you. My name is Stella Iyaji.
Indeed, it's a delight, except for perhaps some people who are traveling and taking flights. We saw the aviation workers decided to embark on a strike, 2-day strike.
Yeah.
And I mean, you needed to see how passengers yesterday in Lagos and some other airports, you know, trekking from far distances,
Yeah, some of
trying
them
to catch up with their
for
flights.
about 3 hours, actually.
You could imagine.
And the aviation workers are saying that today's strike will be worse than yesterday. So I do not know what we're expecting today.
You know, so at the end of the day, the frustration of the aviation workers is kind of being, you know, transferred, you know, onto the passengers and other workers,
Yeah,
really,
but you
which
see,
for me, I
Ayuba,
think is really unfair.
But what I don't understand is the fact that if you notice since last year, the strike by aviation workers is becoming more frequent, you know, and I'm wondering why the problem has not been tackled up till now. You know, at this point, they said the minister is out of the country, and the aviation workers are insisting that they actually, you know, gave warning to the ministry that they are going to embark on this.
Yet,
and of
with
course,
all
the
the
ministry on
warning-
its part is saying that efforts are on to address your grievances. So we do not know where the problem
lies, really. But we
or is
hope
it
that
miscommunication or whatever it is?
Yes, whatever it is, we hope that the issue is resolved as soon as possible so that people can, you know, go back to their normal businesses and not be hindered. I mean, the roadblocks that we saw in Lagos wasn't really funny at all.
And no matter how you look at it, man hours are wasted, resources are wasted as well, because some flights, because of the delay, had to cancel, you know, and that's wastage.
Really, a lot of people with businesses have to now find other alternatives, you know, to it. And some
Imagine some people who may
likely
have
lose-
interviews.
Yes, some may even lose, you know, the opportunities that awaits them as a result of this. So please, it's important that this is resolved as soon as possible. Now let's take a look at the headlines for today. INEC shifts emergency meeting to Tuesday. That's regarding the Adamawa supplementary election.
And then we have census, IDPs, foreigners will be counted, MPC.
Now, JAMB extends registration of direct entry.
Now let's take a look at the details. The Independent National Electoral Commission will hold an emergency management meeting in Abuja today. The National Commissioner Information and Voter Education Committee, Festus Okoye, said that the meeting, which was earlier scheduled for yesterday, will be held today, Tuesday. According to him, this is to enable some of the national commissioners and the officials who are either on field assignments or have distances to cover to arrive today for the meeting. The commission fixed the meeting over the controversial declaration of winner of the Adamawa State Governorship supplementary election by the now suspended resident electoral commissioner, Professor Yunusa Hudu Ari. The commission, however, overruled him and summoned him and others to Abuja. Mr. Okoye had on Sunday announced the suspension of the collation of election results with immediate effect. He said during the meeting a decision is expected to be taken by the Independent National Electoral Commission on the governorship election.
All right. Now, the National Population Commission, NPC, says that internally displaced persons and every other person residing in Nigeria will be counted during the 2023 population census scheduled for May 3rd to 7th. The NPC's Director of Public Affairs, Isiaka Yahaya, in a statement said questionnaire for the census had been tailored to solicit information of the diverse residents in the country. The statement was in response to the Governor of Benue State, Samuel Otom, and the President of the Middle Belt Forum, Bitrus Pogu, who had urged the federal government to postpone the 2023 population and housing census due to fear of exclusion of IDPs in the exercise. Mr. Yahaya stated that everyone resident in Nigeria at the time of the 2023 census exercise will be counted, including non-Nigerians, internally displaced persons, and homeless people. The aim of the exercise, he says, is to leave no one behind in order to ensure inclusive, credible, and acceptable census data.
The Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board has extended the closing date for the ongoing 2023 direct entry registration by a week. The exercise, which commenced on Monday, 20th March 2023 and billed to end on Thursday, 20th April, has been extended by 1 week starting from Friday, 21st April 2023. The spokesman of the board in a statement said the extension is partly to give all holders of Cambridge A-level certificates who were unable to register for the exercise on account of some issues associated with the verification of their certificates another opportunity to do so, as well as accommodate others who wish to register but were unable to do so within the stipulated time. He noted that in its bid to ensure that the Cambridge A-level certificate is onboarded in the verification process, the British Council is partnering with the board and as such will be providing a portal for the seamless verification of its Cambridge certificates as obtained with other categories of A-level certificates.
All right. Now, Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde has urged the Independent National Electoral Commission to do the right thing by declaring the authentic winner of the governorship election in Adamawa State. The governor stated this in an interview with newsmen after paying a solidarity visit to his counterpart Ahmadu Umaru Fintiri on Monday in Yola. He lauded the INEC for a job well done in Oyo State and expressed confidence that the electoral umpire will prove its worthiness in the Adamawa process, as according to him, the whole world is watching. He described the illegal declaration of All Progressives Congress candidate as winner of the election as unimaginable and a shame on the person of the state resident electoral commissioner, and that's Hudu Yunusayari. Makinde urged the people of Adamawa State to remain calm and assured that the current situation will be resolved and their decision will be respected by the concerned authorities, and that's the governor of Oyo State.
All right, now the Nigeria Labour Congress on Monday visited the Labour Party's headquarters as part of efforts to unify the party. This comes as the internal wrangling within the party took a turn for the worse, following the invasion of the National Secretariat by a faction of the party. Noel Sampson has more.
The president of the Nigeria Labour Congress, NLC, Joe Ajaero, said the visit to the Labour Party's headquarters was long overdue since the crisis rocking the party started, adding that unifying the party was of importance in the quest to reclaiming what he called the stolen mandate.
We say enough is enough. Never again will any human being enter here under any guise, under any order. If there is any order, even if we lose our leadership, we have to meet as trustees of this Labour Party to decide the next line of action. This is formed by the NLC-TUC. It is our party. Nobody can come from the blues and declare himself as the chairman or secretary of our party without our consent. It's not done. Such people, if they attempt to come in here next time, all their properties, all their houses will convert it to Labour Party offices.
The chairman of the party, Julius Abure, who welcomed the leadership of the union, thanked them for the support for the progress of the party.
The time has come for Nigerians to take back their country. A new Nigeria, I believe, is possible, and no amount of harassment, intimidation, no amount of falsehood, no amount of falsificated stories will deter us from that pursuit. We refuse to be distracted. We continue to pursue our court case. We are in court because they stole our mandate. We will continue to remain in court till that mandate is recovered. We will not rest on our oars till we reposition Nigeria for greatness.
The NLC president later ordered all members nationwide to arrest anybody that parades themselves as leaders of the party, apart from the one recognized by the court. Noel Sampson, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Now, the National Orientation Agency has assured Nigerians of effective publicity ahead of the 2023 census to ensure all Nigerians are counted. Now, the NOA, which is in charge of public enlightenment for the exercise, says its assurance is because of the importance of the exercise to nation building. Let's take a look.
The 2023 National Population Housing Census, according to the federal government, is built to commence on May 3rd. Ahead of the exercise, the Director of Public Enlightenment Mass Mobilization Department of the National Orientation Agency, Teresa Madukwe, says the level of public enlightenment and preparedness for the 2023 head count is at its zenith and urged Nigerians to make themselves available for the exercise.
Preparation is ongoing and is high, but not without challenges, So it's on top gear. The media chat committee are on, moving around, and then doing advocacies to all the top influencers in the various communities or zones, geopolitical zones. So that's how it is. And then, of course, the TV has its countdown always there, showing it to Nigerians. Yes, we hear things, the stereotype about human beings are not to be counted. If you don't count human beings, how do you cater for them? You hear people saying, oh, you don't count a pregnant woman, lest the baby dies in the stomach. No, that's not true. After all, when you finish the population census today, people still give birth. The babies are born. New births are being registered. So the baby never died. And if you count children today, they will not die. And that one will tell you, don't count children. They won't die. I can assure them of that.
Nigerians say they are ready for the coming census, saying it is their civic responsibility.
It's good for the country to be aware of the citizens they have. Well, if they are aware of us, then they will be sure, our government will be sure of the people they have. They will be sure of the citizens on ground. Employments can be created.
We are all prepared. We are all looking forward to it. Considering that we just came out from an election. So I'm sure everybody, the whole Nigerians, they are happy with the federal government's preparation for it. So we're okay with it.
Last census we did, I think the last one, the result was about 140 million. So there we have been using just mere results. Some persons say it's 200 million, now 160 million. But the official census, the last one we did was 140 million. So it's good the government do another census.
At the time of this report, efforts to confirm the level of preparedness on the part of the National Population Commission were not fruitful. However, the Commission has earlier assured that with the right logistics and funding, it will deliver an effective head count for the nation. Noel Samson, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Thank you, Noel Samson, for that report. Now, the death toll from Saturday night's bandits' attack in Zango-Kataf local government area of Kaduna State has risen to dozens, with many injured. Chairman of the council, Francis Zimbo, while confirming the attack, said over 40 houses were burnt by the attackers, adding that several persons who sustained injuries are presently receiving treatment at the hospital. Zimbo confirmed this when 33 victims of the attack were given a mass burial amidst tears by relatives and members of the community who gathered to witness the funeral service. Let's take the report.
They are depressed and shocked by the attack by terrorists that led to the killing of some members of the communities. It was gathered that the gunmen were said to have invaded the community around 10 p.m. on Saturday and opened fire on the villagers, most of whom were asleep.
10:30 p.m. in the night, we just had gunshots everywhere. They were well armed, came in different directions to attack the community, burning our houses. We now run and hide in the bush. The number of people that were attacked yesterday is 33.
We just run, we don't know where we are heading to by then. And I run away together with my mother and kill my children and also my wife, brother. So, and we total confused, know what was happening in that particular day.
The chairman of Zango-Kataf local government area, Francis Hani, said the communities in the area are living in fear and call on the authorities to do more to secure the lives and property of the people.
So
there was nobody that was arrested. They came in and killed people and then went away.
So this is one too many. How long will this continue to go on? What moves are you making? And what do you think is the way?
Well, what can we do apart from talking to ourselves to remain calm, not to take the law into our hands? But I don't know that if you complain on a particular thing for more than 5 times, at least.
Earlier, the Kaduna State Commissioner for Internal Security and Home Affairs Samuel Arwan, in a statement confirming the attacks, said several lives were lost, adding that troops who had in fierce encounter with the attackers are still in the general area. The police public relations officer of the Kaduna State Police Command, Mohammed Jalinge, when contacted, said the command is still gathering facts regarding the ugly incidents. Bella Musa, Trust TV News, Kaduna.
Very sad scene there. Now we'll take a short break, and then when we return, we'll take a look at the stories on the front pages of our papers this morning.
necessarily tribal or regional.
All right, thank you for staying with us. It's Daybreak on Trust TV. Time to take a look at the lead stories on our papers this morning. We have the Daily Trust newspaper, which is the first paper to look at. It has the lead story that talks about the Adamawa supplementary election. It says, PDP supporters protest, give INEC 72-hour ultimatum. The rider has it that Binani heads to court, insists on Rex declaration. INEC shifts emergency meeting to today. Embattled Rec suspended. SDP candidate seeks disqualification of Binani and Fintiri. You'd find all the details on page 4. Above the lead story, Nigeria becomes second nation to approve R21 malaria vaccine. And that's on page 7. Passengers trek as workers protest at Lagos Airport on page 23. LP crisis, Abure, others remain suspended. Court insists. That's on page 12. Now, the pictorial there shows you PDP supporters protesting in Yola, Adamawa State yesterday, protesting against the, or rather, calling on INEC to declare the results of the Adamawa supplementary election. You have beside that, cholera kills 79 in Kano, Bauchi, Oshun, Abia, Cross Rivers, and 7 others. All of that on page 30. Tinubu micromanages team more than Buhari. So that's according to Fashola, the former governor of Lagos and also Minister of Works and Housing. Babatunde Raji Fashola. It says Tinubu micromanages team more than Buhari. Now you have other stories. Driver jailed 15 months for celebrating election victory with company's vehicle, and that's on page 21. These are the main stories on the Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
Now let's take a look at the Nigerian Tribune. It has a lead story that says, Monarchs for Adamawa Rec as Binani goes to court. The first writer says INEC suspends him. PDP governor calls his action show of shame. And then we have once appointments of Rex reviewed. Makinde visits Fintiri, describes Rex action unimaginable. Protesters in Yola want election results released. And we have the final rider there that says electoral body to meet today. Below that, we have Jungle Justice, police parade, suspected killers of driver in Ondo. APM challenge Makinde's victory fight petition at tribunal. We also have woman sells 18-month-old baby for 600,000 naira to offset loan in Ogun State. Ajokuta Kaduna Kanu gas pipeline 43% ready. This is according to President Muhammadu Buhari. And above the lead story, we have federal government approves Oxford malaria vaccine for use in Nigeria. And the rider vaccine indicated for prevention of clinical malaria in children from 5 to 36 months. Above the masthead, we have passengers stranded as aviation unions begin strike, ground airport movements. And then the rider says strike unnecessary. This is according to the federal government. And we also have NLC officials visit Labour Party Secretariat, back Abure-led ESCO. These are the major stories on Nigerian Tribune for today.
All right, now let's take a look at the Punch newspaper this morning, where you have the lead story. It says, fuel subsidy, FG begins 40% pay rise for workers, April ending. You have government will settle January to March arrears later, says Labour Ministry. Increased transport, housing allowances also, TUC tells federal government. Now, you also have above the masthead of the Punch newspaper, PDP governors demand Adamawa Rec's trial. Binani sues INEC. External reserves slide further to $35 billion. Marginal oil field sale generated 203 billion naira, says Buhari. You also have striking aviation workers reject government plea, threaten total shutdown. You have the pictorial there showing you the protest yesterday. Also, $2.8 billion gas pipeline progressing to power 3,600 megawatts plants, says the federal government. Ogun woman sells 18-month-old baby to repay loan. Well, that's, I mean, how desperate can one really be? Two parties challenge marking this election. Tribunal orders service on Sanwo-Olu. These are the main stories on the Punch newspaper.
Now let's take a look at the Vanguard newspaper. The lead story is still on the Adamawa governorship election. It says Adamawa governorship poll crisis. INEC bars suspended REC to announce result Thursday. And the writer says, stop this Adamawa show of shame, PDP governors tell INEC. We also have PDP supporters protest, give INEC 72 hours to announce result. CSOs urge Buhari to intervene, say drama could hurt democracy. And then we have 2 aides killed, 3 policemen hospitalized as kidnappers abduct son in Rivers. Below that, we have gridlock, flight disruptions as aviation unions begin 2-day warning strike. Below the pictorial, we have crisis. NLC storms Labour Party National Secretariat and says we came to fumigate party's office against rodents. Below that, police arrest man for kidnapping, burying 3-year-old child alive in Katsina. Oshibajo fumes over weaponization of ethnic, religious, sectional prejudices. We also have allocate more resources to health, agriculture, Oxfam tax incoming government. And just above the masthead, NAFDA gives regulatory approval to R21 malaria vaccine. Government probes biotech firm disposing toxic waste into River Benue. How Atiku Obi Kwankwaso helped Tinubu's victory. This is coming from Fashola. And just above that, we have cash crunch. E-payment transactions rise by 298%, rise 298% to 133 trillion naira in 3 months. These are the major stories on the Vanguard newspaper for today.
All right, now on the Guardian newspaper, you have the lead story that says 40% of failed transactions unresolved as e-payments hit 49.4 trillion naira. You also have other stories. Aviation workers reject FG's plea, disrupt flight operations over COS welfare. You also have a new wave of kidnappings amid a botched Naira redesign policy. NAFDA grants provisional approval for first malaria vaccine in Nigeria. Fresh oil output concern as ExxonMobil declares force majeure. You have Chinese brands dominate Nigeria's mobile phone market. And then at a footnote, Adamawa, despite REC's suspension, PDP insists on protest till poll concludes. So these are the main stories on the Guardian newspaper this morning.
Let's move over now to the This Day newspaper. Still on Adamawa governorship election, it leads with this. INEC suspends Adamawa REC as Binani seeks judicial review of her announcement. And the first rider, PDP gives commission 72 hours ultimatum to conclude poll. And then we also have Ari play Yakubo's script, Atiku's aid alleges. Also, we have also this rider here, parties governors forum commends electoral body for nullifying attempted coup. Demands weeding out of partisan corrupt INEC officials. Above that, we have NAFDAC approves clinical malaria vaccine for children. Also above that, COVID-19, FG effects 45.3 billion naira reimbursement to states, FCT. We also have Buhari recounts achievements in oil gas sector, lists PIA as biggest accomplishment. These are the major stories on This Day newspaper for today.
All right, now on the Leadership newspaper, you have the lead story, of course, talking about the story that virtually everyone is talking about the Adamawa governorship election. It says that INEC has no power to void my declaration, Binani tells court. It says PDP governors demand end to electoral in Embroglio. That's commission suspects Reg Hudu Yunusa Ari for Inglorious Act to decide on poll today. PDP supporters protest in Yola. Now, you also have other stories above the lead story. Hope rises for Nigerian children as FGOK's Oxford malaria vaccine. Now, passengers trek to catch flight as unions ground airports. Above the masthead, defend Nigeria at all costs, coerce charged troops. That's the Chief of Army Staff. NLC vows to flush out usurpers from Labour Party. Stop killings in southern Kaduna, Benue, Taraba now. Ogun. Woman sells 18-month-old baby to offset bank loan. 2.4 billion naira debt. AMCON takes over assets of that's Glano, Nigeria. So these are the main stories on the Leadership newspaper this morning, which is the last paper that we are looking at. Now, let's take a look at some of the perspectives to these stories. Quite a number of stories. The political story to begin with, and that's of the Adamawa State supplementary election, have generated a lot of controversy since the proclamation, I may say, of the resident electoral commissioner in Adamawa State declaring the candidate of the All Progressives Congress, Aishatu Binani, as the winner of that election. Now, this is something that has taken a lot of people aback. Stella, I mean, what do you make of all this, really?
You know, Ayuba, a lot of things do not shock me in this country, but the announcement by the REC on Sunday, I was genuinely shocked because I didn't see that coming at all. Because, I mean, we all know that a governor is returned by a returning officer, who in this case was a vice chancellor, Mele, in the case of Adamawa.
Yeah,
so I was actually shocked when I saw the REC announcing the candidate of the APC as the winner of the election. And when I was watching the video, you know, ordinarily you see the returning officer holding a paper saying candidate A, B, candidate so and so of party this having secured so and so number of lawful votes cast is now declared, but I didn't see any of that, so I was genuinely shocked. And but more worrisome is the fact that despite the fact that INEC came out and said that declared that declaration null and void, the candidate of the APC went ahead to issue an acceptance speech, and today we're saying that she has gone to court. Yes,
so the APC in the state do not necessarily see anything illegal about what happened. So, for instance, the one of the supporters of the APC candidate, Senator Ishaku Abo, who is also being a very, very, an advocate of Aishatu Binani as governor, said that, well, INEC does not have the powers to declare that that announcement null and void. That's the claim he's making anyways, without any proof to back that up. He said, according to the Electoral Act, in one of the interviews he granted, according to the Electoral Act, INEC does not have the power to reverse the announcement. Only a tribunal has that power to do so. And it's one of the claims that Aishatu Binani is also making in the motion she filed before the court.
Well,
you know, but
we will have to wait to see what the court is going to say, because as much as I listened to Senator Abo saying that INEC does not have the power to, you know, do that, but then where in the Electoral Act did it say that a result can be announced when collation is still ongoing?
Okay, so that's one of the questions. I mean, that's one of the questions to raise.
Collation was still ongoing, and again,
if I recall, that in the new Electoral Act that we're talking about, that the Commission has the power to review a result that has been announced. That's for an election that has even been concluded,
and
they
the
have the power
announced,
to review within 7 days an election that have been, announced. And if they are satisfied, fine and good, they go ahead. But if they are not, they can then reverse, that announcement. So that's even for an election that has been concluded. Now, let alone the one that collation is still ongoing. Everybody knows that collation is still ongoing. 10 local governments have been collected, remaining 10 of them. And, what others have said also, that the Electoral Act gives the power to declare a winner of an election to the returning officer, not the resident electoral commissioner.
Exactly. So I think that the simple fact that the person who declared, who returned the governor in Adamawa was not the person empowered by the Constitution or the Electoral Act to do that, I think that is a bit clear to everyone. So
it's clear to everyone, but, they have their cases that they want to file in court, and we'll get to see how the court will decide that, or how lawyers are going to debate that.
One issue that keeps nagging at my gut is, why this special interest, as it were, in Adamawa? Why is it that, we've concluded the elections in at least the first round, apart from the off-season states, which are going to hold in November and thereabout. The first round, we've concluded apart from Adamawa State. So why is this a bit...
Well, a lot of issues, really, a lot of interests. Like some of the, political analysts have said that there is a power tussle in Adamawa State. The ruling party wants to take over the state, and that's the ruling party at the national level.
Why the special
and then the PDP wants to retain, the state. So you have all the talks about,
well, the candidates. The ruling party has lost some state already. So why this particular interest in Adamawa? They've lost some states too.
So it's interest is interest. So whatever the reason is, it's left to...
I guess we'll get to know.
Yes, we'll get to know. But the point is that whatever interest that you have, there is a rule of law. There are laws guiding these processes.
Yeah.
There is a constitution. There is an electoral act that guides the conduct of an election. And, people have the right to choose who they want to lead them in the state. And if you are contesting in an election, then you wait for the people to decide. And elections have been concluded, yes. Collation is still ongoing. You wait for the body that is empowered by law
and the
individuals empowered by law to make the declaration, not to go ahead and create something dramatic. Now, this is sort of validating the allegations that some people have made.
That were expressed by the PDP in the state.
That we've had all kinds of speculations that the returning officer is perhaps partisan. The returning not the returning officer, I beg your pardon. That the resident electoral commissioner is being partisan, or that he's being bought. We've even seen a video that went viral on social media saying that one of the accomplices, confessing that 2 billion naira was given to the REC to, act out that script. So it's something that it's unfortunate, and it's certainly an illegality that should not be allowed to thrive.
And in all of this, I think the Adamawa people of Adamawa State, indigenous or residents, should be commended. They have comported themselves in a very good way. They have...
have they really? Because
no. All we are seeing is a protest.
Yes.
We've not heard of vandalization of property and all of that, which is a good thing.
Don't forget
it appears.
Don't forget also, we have one of the national commissioners who was...
in fact, they said it was 12 of them that were harassed.
Yes,
just as we saw the video of one.
Yes, who was harassed and intimidated, which is quite really unfortunate.
It was unfortunate,
nobody should take laws into their hands. Whatever it is that you think happened, even if it is the resident electoral commissioner that you went out of your way to apprehend, you shouldn't. It's not in your place. Carry out jungle justice.
It's not in their place to do that. But
so it should be frowned out.
It should be frowned out. But I think that so far, if you look at what the REC did, it's very inciting. You understand? But the people, aside the harassment of the officials, which is very unfortunate, they have, tried to maintain the peace. And I hope that they maintain that Thursday. We saw that in one of the reports that INEC was going to announce the result on Thursday. So I hope that the peace in the state is maintained until that time.
And we will also continue to watch to see what the court will do this time around. Because, when I saw the motion, of the APC candidate going to court, I kind of feel that, okay, if this is it, was it all part of the plan that, oh, okay, let's get the resident electoral commissioner, who we know by law does not have the powers or the authority to make that announcement. Let's get him to go ahead and do that, even when we know it's illegal, and then thereafter we will fall back to the cliche, go to court,
but you see, Ayuba,
as usual. And then
back,
perhaps when you go to court, only God knows what happens.
But Ayuba, this brings me back to when Mr. Festus Okoye was talking to us before the election, and he talked about the fact that the way politicians go to court adds to the cost of election in Nigeria. Now, for instance, you know that the person who declared you is not qualified to declare you as governor. It therefore means that you have not been declared. So, I mean, the candidate who is a politician and going to court, INEC will have to go to court, INEC is going to hire a lawyer to go to court,
and that would result
in waste of resources.
Waste of time as well. Because, imagine that in the middle of collation of results, this has to happen.
Yes.
Now you go to court and try to secure whatever injunction. Now, if perhaps you eventually do that, what then happens to the process? What then happens to the process? How long are we going to take now to see the resumption of collation? We are yet to see the outcome of the meeting anyways, even though INEC said that they will be meeting today. So we look forward to that, to see what happens thereafter. Are we going to see the resumption of collation and the eventual announcement of results? Or will INEC now say, oh, the matter has now been taken to court?
And then drags the entire process again.
So again, the longer it lingers, the more tension is created in the state. And which is something that, should be of concern to all stakeholders in this instance. Yes. And,
I think, personally, I just think that politicians should be fair to the process.
Yes. And Stella, another thing that people have talked about is the fact that while the resident electoral commissioner was making that announcement, you have police officer right beside him.
In fact, I heard that the police officer is the commissioner of police in the state. That's what I heard. And right on the other side was the DSS of personnel as well, official.
So they were right there.
They were both there.
While the resident electoral commissioner was making that announcement, and the party agents were there. A few of the party agents who managed to get to that place, they were there resisting and rejecting that announcement. But instead, the resident electoral commissioner is being shielded. So that's one, something of concern there, because, as law enforcement agents, what exactly is the role of the police in this instance?
And I want to believe that they will be abreast of the law. They know what was expected and who is expected to do what.
Exactly. So, and, all the, the issues around, coming before the scheduled time, for the resumption of collation of results, showing up with a piece of paper, all of that raised questions and kind of dent the credibility of the whole process and all that. And we hope really that something is done so that this will not set a precedence that we are going to be seeing in our elections.
Done very, very quickly.
Exactly. Yeah. All right, quite a number of other stories, really. We have other stories to look at. The aviation crisis earlier on. We talked about how it has, inflicted pain on people in Lagos and other parts of the country. We've seen that there were roadblocks, particularly in Lagos, and people were stranded, sort of, as a result of this. And this is really something to worry about.
I always wonder why we always wait until the last minute, because the aviation workers, according to them, said that they gave government a warning. They told them that they were going to go on strike if nothing is done about this. And according to them, government waited until this moment. Government on its part is saying that, oh, your demands have been looked into and all of that. So is it a case of miscommunication? Is it a case of, what was it that got to this point? And in any case, the fact that the aviation workers have, since last year, consistently embarked on strike is something to worry everyone.
Really, it is, like you said, since last year, in fact, since the beginning of COVID-19,
yeah,
the aviation industry have been in some kind of a turmoil, if you like, because a lot has been going on there, from the aviation fuel crisis, you know, to the monies owed
by foreign airlines.
By foreign airlines, you know, several other issues, and then the union workers themselves, and you know, just we've seen certain airlines even suspend operations.
In this case, they're talking about the release of their condition of service, and one wonders how long that should take for the condition of service to be released. Even though the government is saying that they have started the process and that it's going to be in batches, agency by agency, you know. But I mean, it should be a process that could be hastened up so that, you know, all of this is tackled.
Yes.
But then they're talking about the sale of their headquarters, you know, and some of the agencies that spoke there, some of the associations, they are saying that the government, this particular administration, has just barely less than 2 months to go, and that there's no need for it to go ahead with the sale of that headquarters. They should just wait, you know, and and so that all the negotiations and all the stakeholders will be carried along in the process.
Yeah, so we hope that whatever it is, the issue is resolved as soon as possible. But Stella, I want us to take a look at one other important story here. Nigeria becomes second nation to approve R21 malaria vaccine. So the NAFDAC, the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, has granted registration, that's a registration approval for R21 malaria vaccine. Now, this is a drug that's developed at the Oxford University. Basically, Nigeria is second after Ghana. And is to say this is an anti-malaria drug for children.
Yeah. You know, when I saw the story yesterday, I was so excited. But then when I saw that it was only for children, I was not like, oh, why? Why not for adults as well? Because malaria is if not our biggest problem in Nigeria, Sub-Saharan Africa and Nigeria, we spend a lot of money. I remember last year when I saw the amount of money that was said to have been spent on malaria treatment. It's a lot, not to talk of the man hours that will be wasted because you won't be able to go to work and all of that. So I think it's a step in the right direction. Let's start with the children, and then maybe someday we also get a vaccine for adults as well.
Yes, although there are other controversies also that have trailed this.
No, but NAFDAC has said that the pluses are more than the minuses. All the you know.
Yes, so,
you know, so maybe we should just give it a try.
Yeah, so this one has to do with maybe the global politics aspect of it. So this drug is now first approved and tested in Africa.
Because we are the ones with the problem,
first
maybe.
Ghana, right? And so there is the issue of, you know, the developed countries not funding, you know, this, you know,
Ayuba, you see, that is our problem.
For the mass production.
Ayuba, that is our problem. Developed countries are not battling malaria. Maybe we should deal with our problem for once. Sub-Saharan Africa is the one with this problem.
Yes.
When COVID came and we saw that it was the West that was suffering it the most, they did everything within their power. Before we knew they had vaccine.
But do we have the funds? Do we have the funds? The finances to sponsor the
I personally have always wondered why we do not have malaria vaccine, considering that it's one of our biggest problems. As a matter of fact, malaria kills people. Even when COVID was here, I don't think it had the kind of impact malaria has on Nigerians. Yet, till date, we are not able to get a vaccine. Look at all our research institutes. What are we doing? Maybe we should start looking at, we have herbs in this country. Maybe look at how they can be developed to get a vaccine. So you see, that's our problem. We now sit and say, oh, the West is not funding us. The West is not suffering from it.
Yes, but you know, we cannot take away the fact that, you know,
that we should always sit that way for handouts.
No. But issues of funding is critical to some of this.
Yes, let's look inwards.
So looking inwards, you could say, okay, why didn't we develop the vaccine right here on the continent?
We can try. It's just that we don't try everything. I have a feeling we keep waiting for a savior from the West. I have a feeling we keep thinking, okay, we have this problem, let the West come in. Okay, Ayuba, you cannot take a problem very seriously if it's not affecting you directly. So yes, maybe the developed countries want to assist us, but to what extent? And they will not see it as an emergency the way it is, because malaria is actually an emergency in Nigeria. If you go to the pharmacies, you see all the different sorts. These days, you don't even know which one works. You buy this one this month, next month you're buying another one. Do you understand? And I'm very passionate about malaria because it's devastating and it's everywhere. You know?
Right. Yeah, let's take a look at also another story here. The lead story on the Punch newspaper this morning. It says FG begins 40% pay rise for workers, April ending. And that has to do with the fuel subsidy issue. That's the removal of the fuel subsidy. It says the government will settle January to March arrears later. It says labor, that's according to Labor Ministry. Increased transport, housing allowances also, TUC tells federal government. So these are all part of efforts to cushion the effect of the removal of the fuel subsidy. So it's becoming real, really, going by this pronouncement, you know, and all that. So, but, you know, the issue that I am worried about is that if you say the federal government is beginning 40% pay rise for workers, I tend to believe that we're talking about public servants. We're talking about the civil service, right? The federal civil service and perhaps maybe the state civil service, government workers. So is this just the federal government?
When I saw it, I was just thinking about it. That's the federal government saying that. How about the state? And don't forget that even the 30,000 naira minimum wage is not being paid by lots of states. So this 40% it's going to be for only the federal workers. And you know, the federal workers and the state workers, they actually go to the same markets.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I'm wondering whether this will be enough, really. If you take the proportion of people who are working in the federal civil service, how many are they really out of the 200 million Nigerians? And whether or not this increase, how will it impact others? You know, how will it impact, you know, the millions of other Nigerians? So if we eventually remove this subsidy,
I don't even know. It's a good thing that our major discussion today is on this subsidy, because I think a lot needs to be unraveled, as it were, because you pay 40%. We've also seen that the government is going to give palliative for 5,000 to 50 million Nigerians, 10 million households. And I'm wondering, if you give to 50 million Nigerians, what happens to the over 150 million that are not captured in this? Because, you know, and who qualifies as poorest of the poor really in Nigeria? It's a bit difficult to
So all of those have been questioned, and we are yet to see how the way and manner the government intends to go about that. Well, we heard about social register that the government now has, that has 10 million households that, you know, they intend to reach out to.
How was it generated?
Exactly. So those are the questions that a lot of people are asking. And experts are suggesting, why don't you do something that, you know, Nigerians would benefit, you know, at least majority of Nigerians would benefit, instead of paying handouts, instead of paying directly into people's accounts.
For instance, why don't you fix the refineries? For instance,
exactly.
So that we don't even have to import the
Some have even suggested
the product.
Some have even suggested maybe setting up public transport services, maybe
you know,
reviving them. I know that in the FCTA we have the mass transit, the public mass transit. We used to have
them, because I don't see them anymore on the roads.
They operate in a few places now,
because
you know, but not as viable anyways as they used to be. So people are saying, why don't you look at something like that? And if you don't want to, you know, put in money as government to start all over again, why don't you consider private, you know, companies, pay them that money, and just by way of, you know, cushioning the effect of the removal of the fuel and all that. But we'll get to see how all of that will pan out. This is the much we can take.
Let's talk about this family that sold their baby to offset debts.
Another star story. 18-month-old baby.
I don't understand.
I wonder how desperate anyone could be, you know, really, to go to that extent of selling a baby of 18 months old.
To offset your debts. That the baby wasn't part of that debt you took. You know, the baby had no hand in the debt. He didn't know that you were going to borrow or whatever it was.
And the question I'm asking is, after offsetting the debt, then what?
What next? Well, you sold the baby. A whole human being has been sold. You know,
it's quite unfortunate, but we have to move on. This is the much we can take on the newspaper review. Unfortunately, our guest reviewer could not join us today, Dr. Theophilus, the director of Daily Trust Foundation. Now we'll take a short breather, and then when we return, we'll take a look at the main stories again on the top of the hour. Join us again.
TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
All right, welcome back. You're watching the Daybreak show on Trust TV, reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. It's top of the hour. For those who are just joining, we're an hour into the show already, and we would like to take the headlines just to take you through all that we have been seeing on our papers and in the news this morning. Adamawa, INEC shifts emergency meeting to Tuesday.
Census, IDPs, foreigners will be counted, NPC.
JAMB extends registration of direct entry.
Now let's take a look at the details. The Independent National Electoral Commission will hold an emergency management meeting this morning in Abuja. The National Commissioner Information and Voter Education Committee, Festus Okoye, said that the meeting, which was earlier fixed for yesterday, will now hold today. According to him, this is to enable some of the national commissioners and other officials who are either on field assignments or have distances to cover to arrive for the meeting. The commission fixed the meeting over the controversial declaration of winner of the Adamawa State Governorship supplementary election by the now suspended resident electoral commissioner, Professor Yunusa Hudu Ari. The commission, however, overruled him and summoned him and others to Abuja. Mr. Okoye had on Sunday announced the suspension of the collation of the election results with immediate effect. He said during the meeting a decision will be expected to be taken by the Independent National Electoral Commission on the governorship election.
All right, now the National Population Commission NPC says internally displaced persons and every other person residing in Nigeria will be counted during the 2023 population census scheduled for May 3rd to 7th. The NPC Director of Public Affairs, Isiaka Yahaya, in a statement said questionnaire for the census had been tailored to solicit information of the diverse residents in the country. The statement was in response to the Governor of Benue State, Samuel Otom, and the President of the Middle Belt Forum, Bitrus Pogu, who had urged the federal government to postpone the 2023 population and housing census due to fear of exclusion of IDPs in the exercise. But Mr. Yahaya stated that everyone resident in Nigeria at the time of the 2023 census exercise will be counted, including the non-Nigerians, internally displaced persons, and homeless people. The aim of the exercise, he says, is to leave no one behind in order to ensure inclusive, credible, and acceptable census data.
Now, the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board, JAMB, has extended the closing date for the ongoing 2023 direct entry registration by a week. The exercise was commenced on Monday, 20th March 2023, and billed to end on Thursday, 20th April, has been extended by 1 week starting from Friday, 21st April 2023. The spokesman of the board in a statement said the extension is partly to give all holders of Cambridge A-level certificates who were unable to register for the exercise on account of some issues associated with the verification of their certificates another opportunity to do so. Also to accommodate others who wish to register but were unable to do so within the stipulated time. He noted that in its bid to ensure that the Cambridge A-level certificate is onboarded in the verification process, the British Council is partnering with the board and as such will be providing a portal for the seamless verification of its Cambridge certificates as obtains with other categories of A-level certificates.
All right, now moving on. The Nigeria Labour Congress NLC on Monday visited the Labour Party headquarters as part of efforts to unify the party. This comes as the internal wrangling within the party took a turn for the worse following the invasion of the National Secretariat by a faction of the party. Noel Sampson reports.
The president of the Nigeria Labour Congress, NLC, Joe Ajaero, said the visit to the Labour Party's headquarters was long overdue since the crisis rocking the party started, adding that unifying the party was of importance in the quest to reclaiming what he called the stolen mandate.
We say enough is enough. Never again will any human being enter here under any guise, under any order. If there is any order, even if we lose our leadership, we have to meet as trustees of this Labour Party to decide the next line of action. This is formed by the NLC-TUC. It is our party. Nobody can come from the blues and declare himself as the chairman or secretary of our party. Without our consent, it's not done. Such people, if they attempt to come in here next time, all their properties, all their houses will convert it to Labour Party offices.
The chairman of the party, Julius Abure, who welcomed the leadership of the union, thanked them for their support for the progress of the party.
The time has come for Nigerians to take back their country. A new Nigeria, I believe, is possible, and no amount of harassment, intimidation, no amount of falsehood, no amount of falsificated stories will deter us from that pursuit. We refuse to be distracted. We continue to pursue our court case. We are in court because they stole our mandate. We will continue to remain in court till that mandate is recovered. We will not rest on our oars till we reposition Nigeria for greatness.
The NLC president later ordered all members nationwide to arrest anybody that parades themselves as leaders of the party, apart from the one recognized by the court. Noel Samson, Trust TV News, Abuja.
All right. The National Orientation Agency has assured Nigerians of effective publicity ahead of the 2023 census to ensure all Nigerians are counted. The NOA, which is in charge of public enlightenment for the exercise, says its assurances because of the importance of the exercise to nation building. Noel Samson again.
The 2023 National Population Housing Census, according to the federal government, is built to commence on May 3rd. Ahead of the exercise, the Director of Public Enlightenment Mass Mobilization Department of the National Orientation Agency, Teresa Madukwe, says the level of public enlightenment and preparedness for the 2023 head count is at its zenith and urged Nigerians to make themselves available for the exercise.
Preparation is ongoing and is high, but not without challenges, So it's on top gear. The media chat committee are on, moving around, and then doing advocacies to all the top influencers in the various communities or zones, geopolitical zones. So that's how it is. And then, of course, the TV has its countdown always there, showing it to Nigerians. Yes, we hear things, the stereotype about human beings are not to be counted. If you don't count human beings, how do you cater for them? You hear people saying, oh, you don't count a pregnant woman, lest the baby dies in the stomach. No, that's not true. After all, when you finish a population census today, people still give birth. The babies are born. New births are being registered. So the baby never died. And if you count children today, they will not die. And that one will tell you, don't count children. They won't die. I can assure them of that.
Nigerians say they are ready for the coming census, saying it is their civic responsibility.
It's good for the country to be aware of the citizens they have. Well, if they are aware of us, then they will be sure, our government will be sure of the people they have. They will be sure of the citizens on ground. Employments can be created.
We are all prepared. We are all looking forward to it. Considering that we just came out from an election. So I'm sure everybody, the whole Nigerians, they are happy with the federal government's preparation for it. So we're okay with it.
Last census we did, I think the last one, the result was about 140 million. So there we have been using just mere results. Some persons say it's 200 million, now 160 million. But the official census, the last one we did was 140 million. So it's good the government do another census.
At the time of this report, efforts to confirm the level of preparedness on the part of the National Population Commission were not fruitful. However, the Commission has earlier assured that with the right logistics and funding, it will deliver an effective head count for the nation. Noel Samson, Trust TV News, Abuja.
Now, ahead of this year's Eid al-Fitr to mark the end of the Ramadan fast, tailors in Kano have been making brisk business and smiling to the banks as they record high patronage. However, as they struggle to meet customers' deadlines, they say the cashless policy has affected their businesses this year. Trust TV's correspondent Idris Jibrin reports.
Yusuf Abdurrauf is a tailor and fashion designer in Fageloku government area of Kano State. He has been in this business for more than 15 years, and he says tailoring and fashion designing is paying off for him.
Tailoring business is a good business because I'm into it already. A lot of people are generating from it. They're earning their daily incomes, they feed their families. It's a business, a lucrative business that pays a lot. That's just the short way they can use to qualify this job of ours.
Like Yusuf, these tailors are now struggling to meet their customers' deadline, nearly 5 days to Salah. They say patronage this year is reasonable, but not like the previous years, courtesy of the cashless policy. We actually found ourselves in a difficult situation this year because of the cashless policy. People will bring in their clothes, they will give us half of the money, later they may say they will send us the money and they will end up not sending. This has affected us significantly.
For
Muslims, it's sunnah to adorn oneself for Eid by wearing the best clothes, which often makes it satisfying to visit friends and relatives while looking good and smelling nice.
So Salah
is a very important period for us, which is why it is very important for us to wear new clothes. For me, I have already sewn my own. I'm just waiting for that very day to wear it. Salah is a one-day event, and everybody would like to look nice and smell good. That is why everyone wants to use new clothes, especially during Salah. In Kano, it is therefore natural to see how people troop into these popular contemporary markets to buy textile materials. But tailors say meeting their deadline this year may likely pose a threat. Because time is already going, and we are actually struggling with people because the Salah is here, and I don't think we will be able to meet up with the deadline because there is no money, so people did not bring in their clothes on time. As they work day and night to meet their deadline, these tailors are hopeful that their customers will come with cash to collect their clothes before the Eid. Idris Jubrin, Trust TV News, Kano.
All right, thank you, Idris Jubrin, for that report. With that, we'll go for a very short break. When we return, we're going to our first discussion of the day, which borders on the proposed subsidy removal. You don't want to miss that. Please.
Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak on Trust TV. Now, for national growth and development, effective management of human and natural resources is crucial. The effective management of these requires political and institutional processes as well as outcomes to achieve developmental goals. The federal government, after scrutiny of the economic burden of subsidizing premium motor spirit for domestic consumption, decided that it has to go to save the country, trillions of naira being expended every year as subsidy. The plan feels subsidy removal and the palliative to cushion the effects of the subsidy removal is what we will be looking at this morning on Daybreak. An economist, team lead, CEO, Grand Renaissance International Limited, and Public Affairs Analyst, Mr. Obinaya Oruagba, joins us in the studio to give us some insights and perspectives to some of these issues. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak.
My pleasure, Yuba. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you. Doing very well.
Okay.
Well, I'm certain that you've been following all the conversations around the removal of the fuel subsidy, which, by the way, started for as long as I can remember, years back.
Yeah.
And we're still here today. The government have decided to remove the fuel subsidy, but it seems to be in a bit of a fix. How to do it remains a big issue. Recently, we heard that the federal government secured $800 million, loan facility, whatever you want to call it, from the World Bank to, use to cushion the effect of the removal of the fuel subsidy, which is meant to end by June.
Yeah.
How do you see all of this? What do you make of it? Would you say that the government is taking the right approach in this matter as it approaches this issue of removal of fuel subsidy?
Okay, thank you very much. To be fair to this present government, and like you said, this matter has been on the front burner for donkey years. And what I have seen is the lack of political will to cut to the chase and deal with it once and for all. And it's also important to go back to what Chinua Achebe said. Chinua Achebe said, if you don't know where the rain started beating you, you will not know where it stopped. We've been independent since 1960. We discovered oil in Oloibiri in the 50s. And we have had joint venture agreements with different companies, and we've been mining. We've been part of OPEC, and we've had quotas. And at some point, we had an oil boom. And what would you have expected? That would take the resources from the oil boom and build infrastructure. And part of building infrastructure is refineries. And when you refine, you're able to consume locally. And then over time, we saw a few things begin to happen. We had such terminologies as turnaround maintenance. You must have heard it, TAM. And then issues around corruption in that sector popped their ugly heads. And then we did not have the political will to punish people for doing the wrong things. So what our people will say is that it's not the day you cut down the tree that it dies. It dries up over time. So what you're seeing today is failure of governance counting from way back, where you have at least 3 major refineries, maybe one other. You have the Port Harcourt, the Kaduna, the Warri, and so on. And then as we sit here, you cannot say you have a drop of oil from any of them. And then we are still expending resources, paying people. And then up until we came up with the Petroleum Industry Act of 2021, we have been paying salaries, huge sums of money to staff working in places where not a drop of oil has been dropping. And then what did we resort to doing? We decided to start importing refined PMS. A country that produces crude now sells cheaply to the world and then exposes herself to the vagaries of the exchange rate environment. You can never win there because it keeps fluctuating. And then you can see, as of 2015, the exchange rate to the dollar was 157 naira to a dollar. But as we sit here today, we got to a point last year when it went to 920. Now, what are the implications? It has affected manufacturing. It has affected you and I on the streets. And you know quite well that when oil sneezes, the rest of the country catches cold because it affects transportation, it affects food, it affects the person in the market. What I would have expected, to answer you directly, sorry I had to go through all of this journey, but I needed to trace a history. Your history is your history. Now, what I would have expected is that we'll have a stakeholders meeting and engagement. So I ask you, you are in the media, has anyone invited you to a stakeholders meeting to discuss this matter? I doubt. But I remember in the secondary school in those days, sometime in 1984, issues around the same subsidy was discussed. And I remember we discussed it. Secondary school children had to go discuss and ask questions. How do we do it? And so debates were held. Now, the civil society, Pengerson came up a few days ago and said if any attempt is made to remove this subsidy, they will go on the streets. These are issues. When they go on the streets, can you control it? Now, have we had that discussion with civil society, with the civil servants? Have we had a discussion with the people in the oil and gas industry, downstream and upstream? Now, I do not know if it has happened, but I sincerely believe that if it has happened, you are in the media, to have been reported on Trust TV.
Well, this morning we saw one of the headlines on the Punch newspaper saying that federal government is promising a 40% pay rise for federal civil servants, which will take effect from the end of April. That's according to the Ministry of Labor. So perhaps you may also
I have a problem with that. I'm going to come to you.
Okay.
My father-in-law was a director in the Ministry of Labor. In fact, he organized the election that brought in Adams Oshomole. I had a discussion with this gentleman. He's 82 today, this year. And the man said, are you supposed to announce when you're increasing salaries? So you just, I heard it too. You just announced that you're going to increase salaries by 40%. The orange seller has heard. The tailor has heard. I don't work in the civil service. So they go jack up the price of meat. And I have to buy in the same market. And then they poor civil servant, what actually is the value of the 40%? Someone that earns 45,000, probably 90,000. A director does not end up to 300,000. I stand to be corrected. And then you say it's 40%. What's 40%? Do the math over 10 and all of over 100, 10 over 100 and all of those mathematics. How much does it arrive at? And what is the price of a tin of milk in the market now? Maybe these are things that should have happened naturally. You see your pay slip and you see that there's been an increase. The dog that bites does not show his teeth. Do we need to make noise and shout about this?
All right, Mr. Nrakpa, you know, one question that a lot of people have been asking is, this particular administration came in 2015. In a couple of days, it will be 8 years old. Yeah. Why is it doing this now? As a matter of fact, before this particular administration came in, I do remember that the president wasn't in support of subsidy. He wasn't. But he came in, and this administration has been paying subsidy under what it calls under recovery. Now, it's about to leave office. The question people are asking is, why now?
To be fair to this present government, there's been a desire, especially from the president, to do things right. However, it's also politics. We're in a democracy. It's not a military regime where you can use executive fiat. So the president probably would have to listen to his party. Let me tell you, if you ask me, I suspect that the president may be trying to protect the next government coming into power. And this is what I think. The president is not going for re-election. So usually what you see, if we're going to be very objective, is that you see a government about to leave office, take the bull by the horn, and take some very hard decisions.
Well, another question is, should you be taking loan on behalf of another administration? Because, I mean, $800 million is a lot of money, yeah?
Should we really go into that discussion on loan now? Because by the end of this budget cycle, by the end of this budget cycle, if you ask me, by the end of this budget cycle, this government would have expended, we would be in debt up to about 77 trillion. The budget of 2023, Nigeria's budget of 2023, is 20.5 trillion. 9 trillion is expected income. About 12 trillion is expected to be borrowed to fund the budget. I have a challenge with that. Because as I've always said, is there no other way? You have a document in SMEDEN, Small Medium Enterprise Development Agency of Nigeria, because I'm an entrepreneurship enthusiast, expert, exponent. I always draw your attention to it. The One Local Government, One Product initiative, initiated by Dupe Adelaja several years ago, tells you that every local government area in Nigeria has at least one commodity that it has comparative advantage on. So you have yam and Jalingo, you have palm oil, Giep, you have egusi in Doma, where I did my youth service. You have denkeli, what do you call denkeli? Potatoes. In Bokos. And you have kafanchan with her ginger. And in the international market, under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, 54 African countries, I had the privilege of speaking in Burundi, Bujumbura, last year at the Nigeria-Burundi Business Summit. And I began to ask a few hard questions. All through the time I was in Bujumbura, I drank fresh juice, passion fruit, avocado, and so on. I hardly drank fizzy drinks. Meaning that Burundi, as small as it may look, with a small population, 15 minutes by air to Rwanda, DRC to the left, Rosisi River and all of those rivers there. You have Lake Tanganyika, which is 760 kilometers long and 76 kilometers wide, with about 5 to 6 countries bordering it, actually about 9. With Uganda's, I later went to Kampala. And what am I trying to say? Has Nigeria looked at investing in Burundi in all of these things as the giant of Africa, and then exploring or exploiting the resources within the African region? That way you derive foreign direct investment. John Maxwell said leadership is influence. Since you are that leader in Africa, maybe you hold hands with these African countries after the ECOWAS region, and then see how you can now deploy the resources you have. Use what you have to get what you want. But this act of taking the first action of borrowing whenever anything comes up seems to me like a knee-jerk approach to things, which was why I talked about stakeholders. There are 3 things you do if you are doing operations management. One is stakeholders mapping. Who are the stakeholders in Project Nigeria? The number 2 is stakeholders engagement. You're engaging me right now. The next one is stakeholders management. How do you manage the stakeholders? Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, NASI, National Association of Small Scale Industrialists, NASMI, National Association of Small Scale and Entrepreneurs, and all of that? What about all of the governmental agencies there? According to the Auditor General of the Federation, there are over 900 MDAs. Do they eat? Do they wear clothes? Do they take drugs? But as you sit here, I like what you're wearing. UNTL, that use the cotton from the north of Nigeria. What has happened to UNTL? UNTL has gone down and over 4,000 staff ended up Okada riders and probably have died. Have we considered reviving it? To revive UNTL is about giving gas, which is the work of the NNPC, which goes back to the history of the refineries. Without gas, the gineries are not able to work on the cotton that the farmers have produced. And I don't want to go into the 3 cardinal points of the present government, which is what? Security, economy, anti-corruption.
Whatever we say at the end of the day, we are still back to the issue of the government have already taken a decision to remove the subsidy. Now, all they are looking at is how do we make that transition seamless for Nigerians, which is why this money has been borrowed. The idea of, sharing the money to the poorest of the poor through cash transfer to their accounts is what, a lot of Nigerians have reacted to, And then others have also made the argument that, why are you sharing this money? Fix the refinery, So I want to know where you stand in all of this and, the justification.
I'm actually sitting.
Okay, where you sit in all of this?
Okay, where you sit in all of this?
Okay, that's what I laugh because when you discuss subsidy, there's so much tension in the room. I like that. Where I stand on this point actually is, there's no need hiding it. The Yorubas will tell you that when 2 siblings come into a room and come out smiling, they have lied to each other. I have had cause to say that if this money has not been borrowed, we shouldn't borrow it. We over-borrowed. No matter all of the argument about debt to whatever ratio and all of that, GDP ratio, whether we have an income generation problem or we have a debt problem, all of that is semantics. The truth be told, Nigeria is not where it's supposed to be. Time was when we used to pay salaries in Guyana to teachers and a few other places. So what has happened to us? But be that as it may, to answer you directly, no, sir, we shouldn't share the money. We have shared enough. And there's really nothing wrong in giving a piece of what we have earned to the vulnerable groups. So you say you have 10 million persons in the conditional cash register, that we give 5,000, and then I will send the humanitarian services ministry giving out 20,000. I've seen that on TV. We cannot argue. But the question is, how did we generate the list? Who are these people? Okay, you can see the village. You can say the village heads identify the poorest of the poor in their communities. But even if you have identified them, the question I always ask is there no better way of disbursing this money? So this is what I say. As an entrepreneurship coach, what do I recommend? I recommend that if you don't train them, do not blame them. So you see the average person who has not managed 1,000 before, you go give the person 20,000. The next thing, the person goes to look for 1 bottle of palm wine to drink and so on. It's possible some have done better. But I'm suspecting that if you gather them in a group, in a cooperative, and you got someone like you, even if you don't have a certificate in entrepreneurship, sir, you are able to teach operations management, business flow, and so on. Okay, there are 4 market days in the southeast, in Igbo land. You have Eke, Orie, Nkwo, Afo. So you go to the big market day and say, okay, you women, 10 of you, go to the market together. Reduce your cost. There are 2 ways you make money in business. They taught us in business school. Either you increase your volume of production or you reduce your cost of production. So you take these 10 women and put them in one vehicle.
Well, this money is not for them to do business, actually.
No, they should do business.
It's for them to take care of the extra costs that will come with the Rumolo subsidy. So we're talking about transportation, for instance. Now you have people who are working, and ordinarily they will pay, say, maybe 200 naira to get to their workplace. Now they are having to pay 500 or 1,000 or whatever it is. So this money is to help, fill up, and
let's tell ourselves
whatever.
My brother, let's tell ourselves the truth.
So.
You know why I got into entrepreneurship? I retired at 36. I left my job. Because what the colonial masters were supposed to have taught the colonized people is what we are still discussing now. We were supposed to have been taught, first of all, ideas generation.
But Mr. Rakba, no matter what anyone is taught,
yes.
What they are proposing is giving the money to 10 million households, a total of 50 million people. The plan is to give 5,000 to each of these households for 6 months, monthly.
Yeah.
So the question I will ask is, do you even think that if you give them this 5,000 and then pull out the subsidy, would that cushion the effect?
No, it will not. That's why I was trying to give us an alternative. And I do not like to go on sets like this. I go on different sets to be a talking head without providing solutions. The foundation of this thing is what I was going at. At the foundation of it is this issue of dependency is not sustainable. You've seen money shared. Is it the first time we're going to share 5,000? This $800 million is not up to how many billions have been shared over the years. Go check your records. But if you go back in time, I recommend that rather than giving them 5,000, put them together, sink a borehole, form a cooperative. I began to talk about the OLOP initiative. These people, I served in Domaluhu government area in 1991. That's about 32 years ago. My journey today began from Doma. My NYC allowance was 350 naira. It's not up to this 5,000 I'm talking about. You can say the value was more than. But I started buying yams, this same money, 5,000, then it was 2,000, 3,000, 6,000, and gathering them in my room. My room became my warehouse. And I started shipping it to the east. My mom was giving yams. We found out that the yam was 7 times cheaper in Doma than in refugee market in Owerri. And she was a teacher. So if she had that much yam, she would not consume all of that. Then she should begin to think about yam can be used for fried yam. So have you even bought a frying pan? For them, it's more sustainable. So you give them 5,000 today, you give them 5,000 tomorrow also. Let's call it a spade a spade. Everywhere you have a local government secretariat. If they had a space by the local government secretariat where they fry things, I met a traditional ruler from Garaku. Okay. And let me land. I met a traditional ruler in Garaku. And I said, what is your challenge? He said he gets subvention from the state government. This mentality of collecting from state government is not sustainable. As I was driving here, I heard that some state governments were sponsoring people to go for pilgrimage and all that. Let's not go into that argument. But I think Nigerians need to come to a point where we talk about self-reliance, where we teach our people wealth creation and not job creation, where the mindset is about what you can create from your environment.
What you are talking about will take time. It's more of
either
mid-term or long-term.
No, sir.
Kind of a thing, and we are talking about a policy that is taking effect in June. And we are talking about how do we make the transition seamless? How do we? It's going to be hard, whether we like it or not. I mean, imagine you said that when Premium Motors, when Phil sneezes, everywhere catches cold. So yes. We know about the ripple effect that this is going to have on the economy. So if you are buying, say, a liter of fuel for 400 naira. Which is likely what is going to happen.
It's going to 402.
Yeah, 402 naira. Yeah. For a liter of fuel that we now buy 195 naira.
Yeah.
That's double. That's more than double of what. So, envisage a situation where virtually everything in the market goes up times 2 of what we have right now. And we have not even recovered from the impact of the COVID-19 and the Russia-Ukraine war. We have not recovered from that. And we are talking about another, increase and all that. We just had an inflation figure that has gone, an 18-year high. So what are we really aiming to do? What are we putting our hands into, really? Are we not going to have a situation where you have Nigerians on the streets, protesting and damaging things? Because we just had a cashless thing, a cashless policy, that has ravaged virtually everyone in this country and all that. So how do we deal with this in a way that, yes, agreed, even government says we are going to remove it, that is settled. There seems to be a consensus somehow on the fact that, subsidy is costing Nigeria trillions and it's not good for the economy. That is settled. But how do we do it? How do we make sure that ordinary people do not suffer consequences that they are not prepared for? Aside from people that work in the federal civil service that are now being promised 40% increase.
So you see, we're back to that same argument. So how do we do it? Methodology. There must be a method to every madness. So number one, this is what I think may happen. I also began to tell you about the stakeholders' engagement. If you engage the people, in politics you do town hall meetings. So we should also do town hall meetings on this one. Let the people understand why you need to remove the subsidy. If you don't explain it to them, communication is key. Someone said, until the person you're communicating with has understood, you have not communicated. And like you rightly said, it's only 5% of our population that is in the civil service. So even if you increase by 40%, you can calm them down so that labor does not worry you. But the average person on the streets who works in the private sector will also be affected, and you're not going to increase his salary by 40%, because employers of labor also have costs. Diesel is over 800 naira per litre. So what I would recommend is there are critical areas that affect people, transportation, which you mentioned. So do we go back to what we used to do, Abuja about mass transit and all of those, and then put money in those areas? You have Innocent, you have other private transport firms. Do we go into a discussion, the same issue of engagement, and say, okay, do we invest in buying more buses, which has been done before? If you look at the Shopee, when in 2012, we went to Ojota and under the Beggar Bridge, under Jonathan, what came out of it? There was Shopee subsidy reinvestment program. And then they came up with a busing system and so on. Do we get buses where you put a sticker and say 50% for anybody that bought this bus? Okay? Now, but if you're talking about the $800 million, you know what I think? I'm thinking that rather than sharing the 5,000 to people, set up committees in every local government area and give each local government area $1 million. I agree with them, have retirees, pensioners, police, security, and everybody form a board. And then I agree a few things that can be done to cushion the effect that will, the infrastructure you can build that will touch the lives of these people you would have given 5,000 naira to. What are the things they can do? They need to move the farm produce out of the rural areas. The next thing you need to do is, how do you find markets for what has been brought out of the rural areas? When you have sold those items, can you put it in a pool? That's why I talked about cooperative. And then find a way to now give profits generated from the potato, from the yam and the palm oil, which is the low-hanging fruit for us as an agrarian country, and then give it back to these people. Then identify who they are. And please forgive me. It is what I know that I will teach you. Is it possible that you now gather them? My mother used to teach people how to do buns, how to fry. Your mother used to teach how to do akara. Your mother probably taught how to be a seamstress. Teach our people critical skills so that they are not constantly waiting for handouts from politicians and from government. Stop this sharing culture. Rather build these structures. If you give $1 million to every local government area, you will still have some change remaining. Then you can now give it to the media, in Trust TV, in a National Orientation Agency to create awareness on what you want to do. Okay, so the people feel that you're about them, you're not just sharing.
Mr. Rakwa, this also still sounds like sharing of the money, but in a different form, because there's no guarantee that those you're giving it to will use it for the purpose. But my question is, every governments of countries across the world, they have something they do for their people. We saw the way the United States government came up with palliative for their people during the COVID. So when it's okay to remove subsidy on petrol because, of course, it's there's a lot of corruption in it. But what would the Nigerian government be doing for its people? Yes, we've heard the argument that it will go into health sector and all of that. But, I mean, what is the guarantee that the health sector will be improved because they've removed this? The education sector will be improved. What is the guarantee that all of these, there will be no corruption and all of that? The shopping you mentioned, we know how it ended. Corruption again. So what's the guarantee?
There's no guarantee. Let's call it spade a spade. But you know, I think it was IBB that said history will not forgive you if you don't take any step. But history will forgive you if you take a step and make a mistake. Let's even do something. This present government, to be fair to her, has introduced a lot of intervention programs that if you can get data, because data hardly lies. For instance, you have the National Microfinance Bank that has the AXMIs and all, and during COVID, you saw most of the things that were done. The challenge we have is that we don't even keep enough data. You have AXMIs, you have the COVID-19 fund that was given. And then they came up with the idea of, okay, train the people, which is what National Microfinance Bank is doing. Train the people. When you train them, you make them write business plans, and then you give them money. The next thing is monitoring. And then they set up enterprise development institutions. My company is one. Yeah, EDIs. And the EDIs are supposed to train them. And then apart from the monies they will get from government, it used to be 10 million. It came down to 3 million. Okay, now it's 3 million now for AXMIs. Now it's expected that you give them a moratorium of about 6 months before they start repaying, and they have between 4 to 6 years to repay. Now what we have found out is that there has even been apathy, especially in the Southeast and a few places, on accessing these loans. So awareness is key. We came up with an idea which we told the Central Bank and told National Microfinance Bank. So our company has even gone around the Southeast, including South-South, creating awareness for people to say, this money exists. There was also the survival fund, if you had 3 staff and above, which you could access. But I'm amazed that when I go for enlightenment programs, people tell you, I don't know what you're talking about. And then lack of belief in whatever government is doing. So we need to tell ourselves the truth that we need to engage our people.
Okay.
The corruption, as per corruption, my brother, including in America, there are cases going on CNN now that are being discussed. We may not obliterate it, but let me also tell you something. If you use technology, just like we talked about the election, I can see you holding a tablet or is it iPad. If we use technology, and like what happened to cashless policy, Naira redesign, what was the issue? That people should transfer money. It's more transparent that way. But this one of giving cash and an envelope to people, you can claim you gave 1 million people and
okay, you know,
and they did the rest.
Yes, you know, Mr. Orokpa, there's a lot of complications to some of these issues.
Yes.
We saw how the cashless policy thing failed, as a matter of fact. No, well, it's not a cashless policy. People call it cashless policy. But let's call it the Naira redesign policy. It failed woefully because of, I don't know, maybe we have lack of understanding, or you have the larger population unable to be on the e-transaction system or the electronic transaction system and all that. You may call them unbanked people. Yes. So it failed. Now, you also have a situation where some of these interventions, some of these programs, the business angle of it, the business relies heavily on environment. So we talk about ease of doing business. If you don't have that environment, which of course the energy sector is a major factor that determines how well an environment functions business-wise. So if you don't have that environment, whatever money you are pumping into anything, don't you think that it has a way of, affecting those businesses, and eventually you may not even, realize the results, the desired results that the intervention is meant to have, or the effect?
We're still back to square one. The energy is at the heart of production, so that you are not just a consuming country. And the energy you're talking about is reliant on Forex, which is a different discussion we may need to have another day, because even that also has subsidy, where dollar is at the parallel market selling at 750, and you're giving it at the official market at 400 to 450. That's another opaque, non-transparent thing that I don't want us to go into today. But staying with you, the truth of the matter is, when I talked about sitting down to plan, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. What happened to the Naira redesign? It's not that it failed. And even if we accept that it failed, how did it fail? sitting down and planning well. You do not implement a policy within 3 months. But also understand that that issue of financial inclusion has been there since over several years, like counting back to 2007. But getting our people to get into that banking system, where over 70% of our money is outside the banking system. No government would allow that to happen because you're dealing with the issue of insurgency. One thing you will never deny is the fact that during that period, kidnapping reduced because the kidnappers would not allow you to transfer superficial, because they would want cash. And since it's returned, kidnapping has also ramped up. But what would have happened is what I talked about: stakeholders, mapping, engagement, and management. If we had managed the people, if you notice, POS and all of those platforms, digital platforms, ramped up. And that was an opportunity for you if you wanted to invest in that. But if we took time and we didn't rush it, maybe the people would have embraced it more. Maybe your grandmother in the village would have helped her open a bank account. But what has now happened is that there's an awareness where you can board a taxi and transfer your fare. But carrying cash around, if you've been around, go to other countries. Not many countries do things with cash. But let's consider that our people, you cannot force people into it too quickly. Take time and graduate them to that digital platform where they begin to understand how to do businesses digitally. That was what happened to that policy. Not that there's anything wrong with the Naira redesign and transition to the digital platform. Let's call a spade a spade. We have not really been fair to our people at the bottom of the pyramid. We've just been coasting. So you and I dress up very well. You need to transfer money. How many times would I give you cash? You transfer money, I transfer to you. But the people in the villages have been so used to cash. I saw your report on the tailors. They still want cash. I don't think it's sustainable. There are people who make clothes for 150,000 naira, the beautiful thing that our sister is wearing, and all of that. You're not going to carry 150,000 cash. There's issue of security around it and all of that. It's safer to transfer, to convince that guy. It's just a mindset thing. Then the CBN came up with the e-Naira thing. I am also concerned about how much awareness was created around the e-Naira. Is it really working as it's supposed to work? So it will still come down to that issue of who are the stakeholders in Project Nigeria. All of us.
So all of this
engage
affects
us.
the environment,
yes.
Ease of doing business.
Ease
all
of doing
this affects
business.
ease of doing business, right? So again, let me just also say that we also have an issue. You mentioned where you started your NYSC and all that. If you look at the issue of insecurity that we're dealing with now, would you say the same thing about that same place where you served, and how things have changed now in terms of the
not being able to access,
not being able to, and for the entire country really to do business with itself, really, if you talk about comparative advantage and the rest of them?
It's tough, my brother. When I gave that proverb that when two siblings walk into a room and come out smiling, they have liked each other, that's actually what I was adverting my minds to. Now you have Chinese arrested for paying bandits to access our minerals. You go to Bauchi and there's a particular mineral, I've forgotten the name, just escaped me now, that is being sold 2,000 naira a bag. Incidentally, that same mineral you have in the battery in your car, the battery in your wristwatch. Zimbabwe just banned the export of that. We have exposed ourselves to exploitation just because we have not sat down to discuss the very best way to run Project Nigeria. So if you go back to insurgency, the farmers are not able to go farm, and after farming, they need to pay bandits and kidnappers to harvest what they have produced. So yam that I used to buy for 100 naira for 40,000 goes to 80,000. And the implication is that if I go into an eatery to eat, the price of my plate of food goes up. So whatever I'm earning, inflation obliterates it. But be that as it may, when I told you about technology, which was what I talked about the Naira redesign, it was about technology. Technology, we were taught in business school, is an enabler. If you go to Afghanistan or Iraq, they can escort you from the airport to wherever you want to go to, because that has become a business for some people who manage all of the hardware and all of the armory and so on. That's technology. They can know where a mine has been planted and you can dodge it. It's risk management with my background in insurance. So let's not stop acting as if we are isolated from the rest of the world. No, Nigeria is not isolated. The truth of the matter is, if we sit down and plan very well, what happens is, it's only Nigeria is say, let's say, housing for all by the year 2000. This by year 2020. We're always in a hurry to say, okay, we're going to escape this in the next 3 years. Why do you want to do it in June?
All right, Mr. Orakwa. Yes, my question is going to that. And there are some persons that say this particular administration has failed in removing subsidy. That particular issue of removing subsidy, they could not do it. And that there's no need for them to now do it at this point. So there are some persons that are saying that, why don't this administration allow it for the next government to come in, study what they have on ground, and see how they can go about it. There are some persons that feel that way. What do you think?
No, they have a right to feel that way, but the government is still the one in charge now. And probably because they don't want to be recorded in the history books as having failed, like you just said. They failed
in subsidy removal.
Now, let me tell you, let's call a spade a spade. This government may just be thinking that she's doing the next government a favor. And remember, it's the same party, APC. So, let me tell you why people fear to remove subsidy, if you want the truth. They fear to remove subsidy because if you try it, the opposition party will use it as a campaign issue against you. So now that there's no election coming up, I sincerely believe we should remove subsidy. I'm sorry. The methodology for removal is not what we should be discussing. Call a spade. Because, like you rightly said, there's so much corruption involved. Who is consuming the 6 trillion? Do we look like 6 trillion? And if we recover 6 trillion in a budget where we're borrowing 12 trillion, maybe that will also help to reduce the borrowing.
If you listen to NLC, it says, don't remove the subsidy until you fix the refineries. What do you say to that?
Okay, so those are the discussions we need to have. So let's agree that we remove the subsidy, discuss, like Ghana. Maybe you should also ask me what Ghana did. The National Petroleum Authority in Ghana, by March 14, thereabout, talked about, in South Africa, in an event, talked about what they did. They removed subsidy. In the first few months, a few companies went down. But as I speak, things are stabilizing in Ghana. Yes, they've had a few economic issues, which is a different discussion altogether. But Ghana has removed subsidy, and they didn't die.
So what are the lessons for us?
The lessons for us is that they identified critical areas where they removed energy subsidy, but applied the money that has been saved from there to other sectors, like you mentioned, transport and all those things that will touch the lives of their people. But they're having all of that hard discussion with their people. So we need to sit down and have that hard discussion with our people, including Nigeria Labour Congress. Has the government invited them to sit down and say, okay, we're going to remove this. Okay, on the refineries, the Nigeria Labour Congress, their staff are the ones working in the refineries. So we need to also query the sincerity and the transparency of the people who work in the refineries, who would take a particular item that was supposed to be new and take a refurbished one and put under turnaround maintenance. These are issues. We also, the followers, including the government, are culpable in one way or the other.
Do you think the lack of trust in government may be responsible for some of the pushback we're seeing on this policy?
Of course. And then lack of trust, like in marriage. There are two challenges in marriage and communication and money. It's lack of trust. Because the question is, if you even look at the last election that was held, or what is happening in Adamawa and a few other places, people will sit back and say, okay, so we queued up. And so did it actually go the way we expected? Was the result not supposed to be transmitted? Was it transmitted? So when those things happened, what was the reaction of government? So that's the challenge. If people trust you, they will do business with you. If people like you, they smile for you. If people love you, they will have a discussion with you. Let's call a spade a spade. Let's stop pretending about this matter. There are a few things that Labour have, like for instance, the aviation staff are saying that from 2009 there was an agreement that was not implemented. ASU will sit back and say, you have an agreement. We all went to school now. We're all students, senior boys. And then you know all these issues have been there. We all suffered strike. And my own children are also going to suffer strike. And then ASU goes on strike for 8 months. Why? For something that was agreed upon and has not been done. So every government passes the buck to the next one. Maybe that's why this present government is trying to say, okay, let's kill it so that the next government starts on a fresh slate. But again, they cannot decide for the next government what they need to do. But I sincerely think that if this government says she has the political will to remove subsidy, let's even remove it, because let me tell you the truth, our borders are porous. So you get refined crude into Atlas Cove, and then you move it into the hinterland. Let me even shock you. I traveled to Port Harcourt on my way to Abonema about 2 months ago, and I found out that I bought fuel at 320 naira per litre. And someone in Soka said, outside Abuja and Lagos, people don't buy fuel at 195. You want the truth? Go up north and go to the east and other places. They've been buying fuel at 280 and so on. So the subsidy itself, I don't even know whether it's been working. Who are the people consuming this subsidy? And you've heard it here. I'm sure you've talked about it on your set. Where is this subsidy? In 2015, 2016, this government made an effort to remove subsidy. It was not captured in the budget. It was after that that they felt the pulse of the people and decided to. And let me even tell you, they've even tried last year or 2 years ago to say, okay, let the economic, forces determine the price of fuel. And of course, there was this shout. But check, most times the shout is either from Abuja, the key cities, Lagos, the rest of the cities.
Could that be why
buying at 195?
Could that be why the product is still selling 195 in Abuja and Lagos and sells at a different price in other places? Well, let's just leave it there. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining on Daybreak this morning and sharing your perspectives with us. Really, we appreciate that. Economist, team lead, and CEO, Grand Renaissance International Limited and Public Affairs Analyst, Mr. Obinaya Oruapa. Thank you for joining us on Daybreak.
My pleasure. Thank you, Hugo. Thank you.
All right. Well, that's our show for today. In case you've missed, you can always catch us across all social media platforms and also on our YouTube live stream, where we stream, you could say, 247, almost 24/7. There you'll find us. My name is Ayuba Ila. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.
Thank you for welcoming us into your homes this morning. Join us same time, same station tomorrow. My name is Stella Iyajendo. Have a very pleasant day.